There is a strange way the mind tries to protect us. It keeps us awake. It tells us that if we think long enough, worry hard enough, replay the conversation one more time, imagine every possible disaster, and prepare for every possible disappointment, then perhaps nothing will surprise us. Perhaps nothing will hurt us. Perhaps we will finally feel safe. But the mind that is always preparing for pain never notices when peace has already entered the room. It is after midnight. The kitchen is dark except for the small light above the stove. A cup of coffee has gone cold beside you. The house is quiet, but your thoughts are not. You remember something you said 5 years ago. You imagine a conversation that may never happen. You wonder why someone has not called. You rehearse explanations no one has asked for. You solve problems that do not yet exist. Your body is sitting in a chair, but your mind is standing in 10 different rooms. You are listening to Still Mind Temple, a quiet place for the mind to rest. Overthinking often begins with a sincere wish. You want to make the right choice. You want to avoid hurting someone. You want to protect your family. You want to understand why something happened. You want certainty before taking the next step. There is nothing shameful about this. The problem is not that the mind thinks. Thinking is one of its natural functions. The problem begins when thought becomes a wheel spinning in mud. The engine grows hotter, the noise grows louder, but you do not move forward. In Buddhist teaching, suffering is often deepened not only by what happens, but by the mind's resistance to what happens. There is the pain of the unanswered message, and then there is the story that says you are unwanted. There is the pain of making a mistake, and then there is the story that says you ruin everything. There is the uncertainty of tomorrow, and then there is the mind's attempt to live tomorrow 100 times before it arrives. This is how one difficult moment becomes an entire difficult life. A woman named Ellen sat in her car outside a medical clinic one rainy afternoon. She had received a message asking her to come in and discuss a test result. Nothing more had been said. The appointment was 2 days away. During those 2 days, Ellen's mind created an entire future. She imagined hospital hallways, difficult conversations, financial problems, the faces of her children, and the silence of her bedroom late at night. She searched online until every minor symptom became evidence of something terrible. She barely ate. She could not focus at work. She snapped at her husband when he asked if she was all right. When the appointment came, the doctor explained that the result required a routine follow-up. It was something to monitor, not a diagnosis of disaster. Ellen felt relief, but she also felt exhausted. She had suffered through a tragedy that had never happened. How many times has your mind asked you to grieve a future that has not arrived? The first lesson is quiet but powerful. A thought is an event in the mind, not a command, not a prophecy, and not always the truth. A thought may say something is wrong. Awareness can answer, this is a thought arising because I am afraid. A thought may say, they have not replied because they no longer care. Awareness can answer, I do not know why they have not replied. A thought may say, I will never recover from this. Awareness can answer, this moment is painful, but I cannot see the whole road from here. This does not mean replacing every fearful thought with a cheerful one. It means learning to see thought as thought. Imagine sitting beside a river. Leaves drift past on the surface. Some are green, some are brown, some move slowly, while others spin in circles near the bank. You do not have to jump into the water after every leaf. Thoughts are much the same. They arise because of memories, sensations, habits, fears, and conditions. They come into awareness, remain for a while, and change. A thought can be loud without being wise. It can be repetitive without being important. It can feel urgent without requiring immediate action. The overthinking mind believes that every thought must be answered. The aware mind learns that some thoughts can simply be noticed. There was once a young monk who told his teacher, "My mind is full of noise. I cannot meditate because my thoughts will not leave me alone." The teacher placed an empty bowl between them. "Fill this bowl with water," he said. The monk did. The teacher then handed him a small stick. "Now make the water still." The monk tried to press the ripples down. Each movement created more movement. He pushed at one side, and the water trembled at the other. The harder he tried, the less still it became. Finally frustrated, he stopped. The bowl rested between them. A few moments passed. The water became still on its own. The teacher said, "You do not calm water by striking it. You calm it by no longer disturbing it." Many of us treat the mind as the monk treated the bowl. We attack thought with more thought. We become anxious about being anxious. We judge ourselves for judging. We worry that we are worrying too much. We demand that the mind become quiet immediately, and this demand becomes another source of noise. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is to stop fighting the fact that the mind is active. Sit quietly and notice what is here. Fear is here. Planning is here. A memory is here. Tightness in the chest is here. The sound of rain is here. Breathing is here. The chair beneath the body is here. You do not need to remove one experience before noticing another. Awareness is large enough to hold the restless mind and the quiet room at the same time. This is not passivity. It is clarity. When you recognize thoughts as events rather than orders, you create a small space. In that space, choice becomes possible. Another lesson appears when we notice how often the mind tries to solve tomorrow before today is complete. A father named Raymond kept his phone beside him during every meal. His adult son had been going through a difficult time and sometimes called late at night. Raymond wanted to be available. His concern was genuine, but gradually concern became vigilance. He checked the phone while eating breakfast. He checked it while driving. He checked it during conversations with his wife. When his son did not call, Raymond imagined danger. When his son did call, Raymond searched every word for evidence that something was wrong. One evening, Raymond's wife set down her fork and said, "You are waiting for someone who is not in this room, and you are missing the person who is." Her words hurt because they were true. Raymond had confused constant worry with love. Love may lead us to take action. Love may ask us to listen, help, call, visit, or set a boundary. But worry without action often becomes a private ritual of fear. It makes us feel responsible while changing very little. Buddhist wisdom does not ask us to stop caring. It invites us to care without allowing fear to consume every hour. Raymond began a small practice. When he felt the urge to check his phone, he took 3 conscious breaths. Then he asked himself, "Is there something useful I can do right now?" Sometimes the answer was yes. He could send a kind message. He could make an appointment. He could ask a direct question. He could offer practical support. Often the answer was no. When there was nothing useful to do, he returned to the meal, the room, and the person in front of him. Over time, his love became steadier because it was no longer mixed with constant panic. The lesson is this: responsibility belongs to the present moment. Anxiety tries to take responsibility for every future moment at once. You do not need to carry Tuesday while living on Monday. You do not need to answer a question that has not yet been asked. You do not need to survive every imagined loss before it comes. Ask what this moment requires. Perhaps it requires a phone call. Perhaps it requires an honest apology. Perhaps it requires professional help. Perhaps it requires sleep. Perhaps it requires doing one necessary task instead of mentally performing 20. Peace often returns when responsibility becomes specific. The overthinking mind says, fix your entire life. Awareness says, wash the dishes. Make the appointment. Answer the email. Take the medicine as prescribed. Step outside. Begin here. Good people still suffer. Careful people still receive painful news. Kind people are still misunderstood. Mindful people still make mistakes. Buddhist practice is not a bargain with life. It does not promise that nothing difficult will happen if you think correctly, meditate faithfully, or behave well. Kindness does not prevent loss. Meditation does not remove uncertainty. Wisdom changes how we meet what cannot be controlled. This brings us to the mind's great hunger for control. A man named Daniel spent 30 years building a small business. He arrived before sunrise, knew every employee by name, and believed that hard work could protect him from almost anything. Then the economy changed. A major client left. Costs rose. Within a year, Daniel had to close the business. He did not only lose income. He lost the identity he had built around being useful, capable, and dependable. For months, he replayed every decision. He should have expanded sooner. He should have saved more. He should have seen the change coming. He should have trusted one advisor and ignored another. At night, he lay awake conducting trials in his mind. He was the judge, the prosecutor, the defendant, and the witness. Every trial ended with the same verdict, guilty. One morning, Daniel met an old friend on a park bench. His friend listened quietly and then asked, "Are you trying to learn from the past, or are you trying to change it?" Daniel did not answer. The question remained with him. Learning from the past has movement in it. It asks, what can I understand? What responsibility can I take? What will I do differently? Trying to change the past has no movement. It circles the same closed door, demanding that it open into yesterday. The third lesson is that acceptance is not approval. Acceptance is the end of arguing with the fact that something has already happened. You may dislike what happened. You may grieve it. You may need to repair what can be repaired. You may need to leave a harmful situation, seek justice, ask for help, or protect yourself. Acceptance does not mean pretending that harm was acceptable. It means seeing clearly enough to respond to reality instead of fighting an image of how reality should have been. Daniel eventually wrote down the decisions he regretted. Beside each one, he wrote either lesson, repair, or release. Some mistakes contained lessons. A few required repair. The rest could only be released. This did not restore his business. It did not erase the grief. But it ended the nightly courtroom. What are you still prosecuting yourself for? Did you stay too long? Did you leave too soon? Did you trust the wrong person? Did you fail to notice what now seems obvious? The past always looks clearer from the future. You are judging an earlier version of yourself with information that person did not yet have. Responsibility is necessary. Cruelty is not. In Buddhist teaching, karma is not a punishment delivered by the universe. It is the way intention, repetition, words, and actions shape the mind and influence the conditions that follow. When anger is repeated, anger becomes easier. When dishonesty is repeated, trust becomes weaker. When compassion is practiced, the heart becomes more capable of compassion. When awareness interrupts an old pattern, a different future becomes possible. This is why one honest apology matters. This is why one respectful boundary matters. This is why choosing not to send the cruel message matters. You may not control every condition, but you participate in the conditions you create. A fourth lesson emerges in the space between feeling and reaction. A woman named Nina received a message from her sister that read, "I guess you are too busy for family now." Nina had been caring for a sick partner, working overtime, and sleeping poorly. The message felt unfair. Her fingers began typing immediately. She wrote a sharp reply explaining everything she had done, everything her sister had failed to understand, and every old wound that had never been settled. Before sending it, Nina remembered a practice taught by a counselor. Take 3 breaths before answering anything written in anger. She placed the phone on the table. 1 breath. The anger was still there. A 2nd breath. Beneath the anger, she noticed hurt. A 3rd breath. Beneath the hurt, she noticed exhaustion. Nina deleted the message and wrote, "I am overwhelmed and I miss you too. I cannot talk tonight, but I can call Sunday." The situation did not become perfect. Her sister still had feelings. Nina still needed boundaries. But the pause prevented one painful moment from becoming a larger fire. Overthinking and impulsive reaction may seem like opposites, but they often come from the same place: discomfort with uncertainty. One mind reacts too quickly to escape discomfort. Another mind thinks endlessly to escape discomfort. Both are attempts to avoid simply feeling what is present. The pause teaches us that a feeling does not have to become an action immediately. Anger can be felt without becoming cruelty. Fear can be felt without becoming surrender. Guilt can be felt without becoming self-punishment. Desire can be felt without becoming obedience. The pause is small, but lives change inside small spaces. The next time you feel provoked, do not ask first, "What should I say?" Ask, "What is happening in me? Is the body tight? Is the jaw clenched? Is there fear beneath the anger? Is an old wound speaking through a new situation?" This does not excuse harmful behavior from others. It helps you avoid adding your own harm. Compassion is not weakness. A calm boundary may be more compassionate than a resentful yes. There was a nurse named Maria who always agreed to cover extra shifts. Her co-workers praised her kindness. Her family depended on her. She told herself that good people should be available. But Maria began to feel bitterness toward everyone she helped. She answered messages with a smile and complained alone in her car. She gave more than she could offer freely, then blamed others for accepting it. One evening, her daughter was waiting at the kitchen table with homework spread out in front of her. Maria received another request to cover a shift. Her first instinct was to say yes. Then she looked at her daughter, who had stopped asking for help because she already expected the answer. Maria said no. She felt guilty for the rest of the evening. But guilt is not always proof that you have done something wrong. Sometimes guilt is the feeling of breaking an old pattern. The fifth lesson is that peace requires boundaries around what the heart can carry. Buddhist compassion is not endless availability. Compassion includes wisdom. It considers the suffering of others, but it does not require you to abandon your own health, safety, or dignity. You can forgive someone without returning to abuse. You can understand another person's pain without allowing them to harm you. You can love a family member and limit how often you speak. You can wish someone well from a distance. You can say no without hatred. A boundary made in anger may become a wall. A boundary made with awareness can become a gate. It does not reject all connection. It allows connection to happen without destroying the person who is trying to care. A guide may point toward the door, but you must still take the step. A teacher may explain compassion. A therapist may help you understand a pattern. A friend may tell you the truth. A child may show you what your absence is costing. But understanding alone does not change a life. You must make the call. You must cancel the commitment. You must ask for help. You must stop returning to the place where your spirit is repeatedly injured. The mind often overthinks because action feels frightening. It studies the door so it does not have to walk through it. You may spend months asking whether a boundary is justified when deep inside, you already know the relationship is harming you. You may spend years wondering whether you should apologize because pride is afraid of becoming smaller. You may research every possible path because choosing one means releasing the others. There comes a moment when another thought will not help. The step must be taken. Another lesson waits inside our need for approval. A retired teacher named Harold had spent most of his life being admired. Students remembered him. Colleagues respected him. He was often asked for advice. After retirement, the calls became less frequent. At first, he enjoyed the quiet. Then the quiet began to feel like disappearance. He checked social media to see who remembered his birthday. He grew resentful when family members made decisions without consulting him. He corrected people in conversations, even when the correction did not matter. He began telling the same stories because those stories returned him to a time when others listened closely. One afternoon, Harold's grandson asked him to help build a small birdhouse. Harold began explaining the proper methods. The boy tried to follow but soon lost interest. As the child walked away, Harold realized he had wanted to be impressive more than he had wanted to be present. The sixth lesson is that much overthinking comes from building a self in the minds of other people. Did they respect me? Did I sound intelligent? Do they still need me? Was my story interesting? Did I say too much? Did I say too little? When identity depends on the reactions of others, the mind becomes a full-time manager of reputation. Every conversation is reviewed. Every silence becomes evidence. Every disagreement feels like danger, but you cannot rest inside another person's opinion. Harold began practicing something simple. When speaking with his grandson, he asked one question and listened fully to the answer. He stopped turning every moment into a lesson. He let the birdhouse be crooked. The boy returned. Needing less approval does not mean becoming indifferent. It means allowing your worth to remain intact when applause is absent. Some of the most important wealth in life will never appear in a bank account. A trustworthy heart is one of them. A person who keeps their word has wealth. A person who can apologize has wealth. A person who can listen without making everything about themselves has wealth. A person who can sit in an ordinary room without needing to impress anyone has wealth. A peaceful later life is not measured only by savings, possessions, or achievements. It may mean fewer regrets, honest relationships, manageable needs, a stable home, enough health to enjoy the morning, someone to call, the ability to sleep, and a mind that no longer fights every memory. A new opportunity does not guarantee peace. More money does not guarantee peace. A spiritual teacher does not guarantee transformation. Peace must be protected through honesty, gratitude, humility, boundaries, restraint, forgiveness, responsibility, and compassion. The seventh lesson comes from impermanence, a teaching many people misunderstand as dark or pessimistic. Impermanence does not say that nothing matters. It says that things matter because they change. An aging mother waits for her daughter's call. The daughter intends to call tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes a month. A friend invites you to lunch. You are busy. You assume there will be another chance. A child asks you to sit beside them. You say in a minute. One day the child stops asking. Impermanence is not meant to frighten us. It is meant to wake us gently. The people you love are changing. You are changing. This room will not always look the way it does tonight. The body will not always carry you in the same way. The ordinary day you are rushing through is part of your life, not an obstacle standing before your life. There was an elderly woman named June who kept a voicemail from her brother after he died. The message was ordinary. He asked whether she wanted anything from the grocery store. He mentioned the weather. He said he would call again later. For a long time, June could not listen to it without weeping. She regretted the calls she had missed. She regretted the argument they had carried for 2 years over something neither of them could fully remember. She regretted assuming there would always be more time. One morning, after listening to the message again, June heard something she had missed before. Her brother's voice was not asking her to suffer forever. It was simply a voice from an ordinary afternoon, offering to bring groceries. June made tea and sat near the window. Morning light entered the room. For the first time, the memory did not feel like a punishment. It felt like a visit. Impermanence had taken her brother's physical presence, but it also taught her not to postpone tenderness. That afternoon, she called a friend with whom she had not spoken in months. Overthinking often traps us in imaginary time. We revisit the past and rehearse the future while overlooking the only place where love can be practiced. Now, call the person. Sit beside the child. Say thank you while the listener can still hear it. Apologize before pride turns one season into 10 years. Do not use impermanence to panic yourself. Use it to become sincere. Another lesson appears when we stop asking the mind to solve the entire path and give it one simple task. A young man named Caleb had been unemployed for several months. Every morning, he woke with a heavy chest. He thought about money, his parents' disappointment, the gap on his resume, and the possibility that his life had already gone wrong. He made long lists, then avoided them. He researched careers, then opened more tabs. He compared himself to former classmates and felt smaller each time. One day, a mentor asked him, "What is one useful thing you can complete before noon?" Caleb began explaining the entire situation. The mentor repeated one thing. Caleb chose to update the first paragraph of his resume. When he finished, he sent one application. Then he took a walk. The next day, he made one phone call. The day after that, he attended one meeting. His anxiety did not disappear. His circumstances did not change immediately, but he stopped asking his frightened mind to carry the whole future at once. The 8th lesson is that attention becomes steady when life becomes specific. One breath, one page, one conversation, one meal, one honest answer, one small responsibility completed with care. A monk once asked his teacher, "What is the path?" The teacher answered, "When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep." The monk said, "Everyone does that." The teacher replied, "No. When people eat, they think of 100 things. When they sleep, they continue arguing with the day." The teaching is not about becoming simple-minded. It is about becoming undivided. When you wash a cup, wash the cup. When you listen, listen. When you walk, feel the ground. When you rest, stop turning rest into another performance. The mind may continue producing thoughts. Let them move in the background while your hands return to the task. This is why ordinary work can be healing. Folding clothes, sweeping a floor, watering a plant, preparing food. These actions do not solve every problem, but they bring the mind back into contact with reality. Overthinking feeds on abstraction. Awareness returns through sensation. The warmth of water, the weight of a plate, the sound of a broom, the feeling of feet against the floor. Your life is not only the story in your head, it is also this breathing body, this room, this morning, this unfinished but real day. The ninth lesson is perhaps the most compassionate. The goal is not to become a person who never overthinks again. That goal would become another source of overthinking. The goal is to notice sooner, to return more gently, to believe fewer fearful thoughts, to recover more quickly after being pulled away. A man named Thomas began meditating after a painful divorce. He hoped meditation would stop the memories. Instead, when he sat quietly, the memories became louder. He concluded that he was failing. A teacher asked him, "When you notice you have wandered, what do you do?" Thomas said, "I become frustrated and force myself back." The teacher nodded. "Then you are practicing frustration." Thomas looked confused. The teacher continued, "The return is the practice, not the staying." This changed everything. Thomas had believed that peace meant never leaving the present moment. Now he understood that peace was also the way he returned. He could return with anger, or he could return with kindness. He could say, "There I go again. I am hopeless." Or he could say, "The mind has wandered because it is hurting. Come back." This is self-compassion, not self-indulgence. Self-compassion does not excuse harmful behavior. It creates enough safety to face behavior honestly. A person who hates themselves may hide from responsibility. A person who meets themselves with awareness can say, "I caused harm. I must repair it, and I do not need to become a monster in order to become accountable." Kind people can still hurt others. Mindful people can still speak carelessly. Spiritual people can still avoid difficult truths. Practice is not perfection. It is the willingness to see clearly and begin again. Perhaps you have been overthinking because part of you believes that one perfect insight will finally remove uncertainty. But life may never provide that kind of certainty. You may need to choose without knowing everything. You may need to love someone without being able to protect them from every pain. You may need to leave while part of you still wonders whether staying could have worked. You may need to forgive without receiving an apology. You may need to ask for professional help even though you wish you could manage alone. Therapy, medical care, healthy boundaries, practical action, and spiritual practice can support one another. Meditation is not a replacement for treatment. Compassion is not a replacement for safety. Acceptance is not a replacement for responsibility. Wisdom is not refusing help. Wisdom is knowing that you do not have to carry everything alone. There may be an obstacle in your life that cannot be solved only by thinking. Perhaps it is resentment. You replay what someone did because the mind believes remembering the injury will protect you from being hurt again. But resentment keeps the offender present even when they are no longer in the room. Forgiveness does not mean saying the harm was acceptable. It does not require reconciliation. It does not require returning to danger. Forgiveness may simply mean refusing to let the injury decide the quality of every future morning. Perhaps the obstacle is people-pleasing. You rehearse every sentence because you want to avoid disappointing anyone. But a life built around avoiding disappointment becomes a life in which you slowly disappear. Perhaps the obstacle is the illusion of control. You plan every possible outcome because uncertainty feels unbearable. But certainty is not available in the way the frightened mind wants it. The practice is not to control life completely. It is to meet life honestly. Notice what the mind is doing. Understand what it is trying to protect. Practice a different response. Protect the change through repetition. This is how karma works in daily life, not as reward or punishment, but as direction. Each repeated response becomes a path. Each time you pause instead of striking back, the path of restraint becomes clearer. Each time you tell the truth, the path of honesty becomes easier to find. Each time you return from a thought without insulting yourself, the path of compassion deepens. Each time you set a calm boundary, the mind learns that peace does not require self-abandonment. A teacher may inspire you. A friend may support you. A stranger's kindness may remind you that the world still contains goodness. But no person can practice your life for you. The turning point is often ordinary. An unanswered message, a quiet morning, a difficult conversation, a mistake you finally admit, a parent's voice growing older, a child waiting for your attention, a hospital hallway where you realize how little control anyone truly has, a porch light left on by someone who still hopes you will come home. In such moments, the mind may become still, not because every question is answered, but because something more important than the question becomes visible. What matters now? Perhaps what matters is being kind. Perhaps what matters is telling the truth. Perhaps what matters is leaving. Perhaps what matters is staying. Perhaps what matters is resting without guilt. Perhaps what matters is doing the next necessary thing. You do not have to solve your whole life tonight. Take 3 conscious breaths. Write down one fear. Ask whether it is a fact, a possibility, or an old story. Make the delayed phone call. Sit quietly for 10 minutes without demanding that the mind become empty. Apologize honestly. Set one respectful boundary. Do one kind act privately, without needing praise. Complete one small responsibility. Reduce one source of noise. Ask for professional help when the burden is too heavy to carry alone. These actions may appear small, but a life changes through repeated moments, not through one dramatic revelation. There is a Zen story about a student who asked his master, "How can I become free?" The master asked, "Who has tied you?" The student became silent. Many of the knots we feel are real. Trauma is real. Loss is real. Poverty, illness, betrayal, and injustice are real. Buddhist wisdom should never be used to blame people for their suffering. But some knots are tightened by the mind's repeated grip. The need to know. The need to be right. The need to be approved of. The need to rewrite the past. The need to guarantee the future. The need to become a version of yourself that never feels fear. Freedom may begin when the grip softens, not when every problem disappears, not when every wound is healed, not when everyone understands you, but when you stop making peace depend on conditions that may never arrive. Peace does not begin when life becomes perfect. Peace begins when we learn to meet life with awareness. This awareness is not cold. It is deeply compassionate. It sees the frightened mind and does not shame it. It sees anger and looks beneath it. It sees the old habit and remembers that habits can change. It sees another person's suffering without surrendering wisdom. It sees impermanence and becomes grateful. It sees uncertainty and still takes the next step. Imagine the evening growing quiet now. The rain that tapped against the window has stopped. A few drops still fall from the roof. The kitchen light is warm. The coffee has cooled. The phone remains silent. Nothing outside has become perfect. There may still be bills on the table. There may still be a conversation you need to have. There may still be grief in the house. There may still be uncertainty waiting beyond morning. But perhaps the mind does not need to travel there yet. Perhaps this breath is enough for this breath. Perhaps the chair can hold your body. Perhaps the floor can hold the chair. Perhaps the earth can hold everything you have been trying to carry alone. Let the thoughts come. Let them pass. You do not need to chase every one. You do not need to believe every one. You do not need to answer every one tonight. The person who changes their life is not the person who finds a miracle. It is the person who wakes up and no longer lives in the old way. They pause before speaking. They ask for help. They stop returning to harm. They rest without turning rest into guilt. They choose honesty over image. They choose one task over 100 imagined disasters. They forgive wisely. They protect what is peaceful. They begin again after forgetting. This is not a life without pain. It is a life in which pain is no longer allowed to become every thought, every identity, and every future. A temple bell does not hold its sound. It rings, trembles through the evening air, and fades. The silence after the bell is not empty. It is open. Your thoughts may be like that sound. They arise. They move through you. They fade when they are no longer held. Letting go is not giving up. It is releasing what the heart can no longer carry. Peace is practiced while washing a cup, answering a message, sitting beside someone you love, walking away from what harms you, or returning to one quiet breath. Awareness changes the direction of a life because awareness creates choice. And choice, repeated with patience, becomes a path. May you walk that path gently. May you stop asking the mind to solve what only time can reveal. May you remember that uncertainty is not failure. May you meet your own pain without becoming its enemy. May you discover that beneath all the noise, there is still a quiet place within you that has never forgotten how to rest. If this reflection brought you a moment of peace, please subscribe to Still Mind Temple and share it with someone who may need a quiet place to rest today.